Hi, this is Conversations for Men that women need to hear. I'm Angeline Chu Longshore with Zelis Daniel. This show is sponsored by Chew on This Media LLC and Visualize Unlimited LLC. And today, Zelis, we're talking about women's sexuality as a superpower. Yes, that's because this is such a big, important, heated topic for a lot of people because sexuality is such a big quandary for women. There's an inner battle that happens. How women use it, American women, it's different than how other people across the globe sit in their sexuality, and women, the way that women deal with it triggers men, triggers women in certain ways that we have a hard time discussing it, as we know by the Me Too movement. There's a lot of heated stuff with that. But really, we're talking about the superpower here. And it can be a really good thing. It can be a positive thing. So, you're coming from the man's side. What are some of the things that you feel like are really crucial to talk about today?
Well, I think that, we all have different attractive qualities and things that we do. And, in our current climate, as we're striving towards having equality and there's this attitude of don't be as women. And I said something on our last little show about, how women ultimately have the key to influence relationship. We've talked about how women are kind of taking this masculine role of dominance and control, and in this very masculine way in relationships, and it's having a very negative impact on families. And women have this thing that I consider to be a superpower. It's they're going to decide whether or not you're going to have sex, and it's something that in our current culture and climate is we're trying to not sexualize women, which I see the point of that, especially having young daughters and whatnot. But really just kind of getting down to it, it's do men like sexy? Why do women spend so much time and energy making themselves appear to be the most beautiful as they can, using makeup and hair and fingernails and clothing and workout programs? It's women are in society. It's a huge industry. It's probably one of the top industries in the world right now is women's health and beauty, and so you can't overlook that that's what's happening, and if you want to not be sexualized, then how do you really feel about it? I think that's just getting women to think, hey, nobody wants to be sexually taken advantage of. Nobody wants to be undressed with their eyes or manipulated sexually. But in the same essence, women oftentimes can manipulate situations with a little flirtation, a little seduction, and it doesn't have to give up anything, but it is a superpower. And, I think in families and homes, that's kind of gets lost, and in some relationships it can be lost. And I think in good relationships and healthy relationships, there is that playful sexuality energy, and the man's going to be willing to do a lot for his partner. He's going to do what she wants. She can wrap him around her finger with the right energy play. And it doesn't even have to be about just having sex. It's an energy play.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about wrapping around the finger, and I see it as instead a more healthier way, and it could be super healthy. It's a necessity to have a healthy sexual relationship with your husband, with your wife. It's crucial for a happy marriage. If that is not there, the marriage will exist, but nobody wants to just exist, in their marriage. They want it to be thriving. And so instead of wrapping around the finger, there's a way to have that. What we talked about last week was reciprocity, where if that's in the relationship, then it's a given that they're going to want to help each other in every single way. Because as we talked about, there's the three things that a man needs, and that's the queen, the mother, and the enchantress. It's those personas embodied in the relationship. And so this sexuality piece is huge. And, women, one of their biggest fears is monogamy, or the lack of. And so, I don't want to go so much down that road, but if you have those three things, then you won't have a problem with that, women. And men know if you feel those three things in your relationship, you're fulfilled. So we're talking about the sexuality piece, and it's a huge superpower, but women are using their sexuality, at least American women, in a way that is not so healthy because they do have this inner battle with it. And they're not really necessarily aware. It's a cultural thing. So there's a lot of things that are just handed down to us, and we're conditioned by our culture. And so we act out in these ways that as women, we're not even aware that we're doing. So I want to address the instinctive part first. I did a show for Discovery Health on attraction, sexual attraction, and the reasons for that. And so I got to interview some really interesting people about the anthropological evolution of what's happening. And I'm not going to go so dry on you. That sounds really dry. But basically, the reason why women dress sexy, and
we need to understand where it's coming from.
Yeah. So here's what exactly. Thank you. So here's why, guys, and here's why women. Men are this way and women are this way, and why we do these things. That's the question. So women don't even necessarily realize why they feel like they need to look pretty and dress sexy and look young and all these things, when on the other side of their brain is, I have to keep men in line so that they don't try to harm me or do anything or attack me. So there's this dichotomy happening inside of them, but the reason they do that physically is for survival, and they're not even aware of it. They're not aware of this innate thing, again, in our DNA for our survival. And the reason they do that is because in order to procreate, a woman is attractive to a man. This is just instinctive animal, attraction, if she is young and fertile. So what it comes down to is rosy, literally there's certain features: rosy cheeks, shiny hair, shiny teeth and skin. I mean, nice, healthy looking teeth and skin. An hourglass shape, because if she has no hips or no boobs, then can she actually be fertile and carry a child? There's, I'm trying to think of the other things. Those are some of the main things that a man will just instinctively be attracted to. So boobs and hips, and you could be an attractive woman for sure without boobs and hips if you're just, but the man will also look for the shiny hair and the youthfulness. So the makeup is to look young. That's why aging for women is such a thing. We don't really not want to look old just because we think it's wrong, but it's almost like this fear, because we instinctively know for our survival that there's this attractiveness that has to happen. And women think we do it for each other. That's what they say. Oh, I'm just getting dressed for, because I want my girlfriends to see me in this cute outfit and look good, or for myself. But beneath that, there's that little inkling of survival. And women don't even realize that this is there because they haven't heard the research. And then on the other side, for men, the reason why their looks are somewhat important. But when you think about the survival of the species, we need a man to go out and bring home the bacon and to protect us. We need food. We need protection. And so women do look for a man that has the features that are balanced, because balanced means healthy. So they do this thing with the proportions of your face, like from your forehead to your eyes, from your eyes to the top of your lip, and then your lip to your chin. If those are proportionate, and your eyes being a certain set apart, then you are an attractive person. It's really interesting. So we'll look for those small cues just
Yeah.
genetically. But then for a woman to be attracted to a man, the reason they want that powerful man is because it's a survival thing. You know, it's not like, oh, I need somebody with status. Well, some people may rationally think that, but underneath that, there's that I'm going to be okay. We look for our mates. So, you know, then there's the other side, the superpower is that we do hold the cards as far as women if our species survives. So there is a fight for the man to get to the woman. And that is not a bad thing, guys. You know, you have these urges and they're natural and wonderful because we need our species to survive. And women automatically these days, especially American women, we're like, no, you know, that is horrible. That is not what we, and it's like, no, we actually do want that, guys. We do, we need that. But if that's balanced with respect, admiration, kindness, loving, care, you know, all those things in a family unit that will like help the family to survive and thrive, then it's welcomed. So the ickiness of some weirdo guy coming at you and undressing you mentally is icky. But for a man that we want to be with, undressing us mentally is actually fun, you know? So yeah, I know that sounds like, you know, it's hard for men because they've been told so much to just like hold themselves back sexually. Don't be that aggressor. But it is an animal instinct that I know in the appropriate way is welcomed. I know amongst my girlfriends it's welcomed, but it has to be appropriate. So, you know, that's the bottom. There are those weirdo people, sicko people that I've had to deal with too, that are aggressors that we don't want. And so if you're one of those, okay, don't listen to anything I'm saying. Just stay away. But if you're a normal guy, then be a man, you know, with all of your sexuality and bring the respect, you know? That's the bottom line.
It seems like we're at this point where in order to have equality, which is what we're pushing for, which just on a little side note, how can we all be equals if we're all individuals? Like, we need to be treated as individuals, not as equals, whether it's gender or race or anything. But it seems like in this push for equality, that we're just throwing instinct out the door. And we are programmed to survive as a species is just has to be suppressed. We can't have that if we want to be equals. Am I right?
Yes. So that
this is for equality.
This is the problem. Yeah, this quest for equality.
Just pushing back.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because it's instinct versus conditioning of culture. Were you going to say something?
And I think that, you know, I mean, there's lots of things to talk about this because it just seems like we just boil it all down to where's the problems, what's like really happening, what, you know, it's like the birth of the Karen is coming from this conditioning of equality, you know, and it's like people are like, if I see somebody else doing something, I can do it too, you know. That egotistical chauvinist man is asking for the manager and Karen's like, I can ask for the manager too. And nobody needs to talk to the manager. They need to accept that like somebody made a mistake and we can get this worked out, but you're not nobody's entitled to have their meal comped just because there was, you know, something wrong with their steak. It's so difficult, I think, in this climate because as a man, I'm afraid to talk about these issues. You know, it's like we're at a real sensitive point in culture where it's like I feel like I need to just keep my mouth shut because I'm not ready to answer these questions. I'm not ready. I don't have the passion behind me that you know, social justice gives people to be like, no, you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. It's like, okay, well, it kind of comes back to this thing that we were mentioning about how when you're in relationships and your partner like shares something that may be against the what direction our society is going and equality or whatever it is, instead of your partner saying, why do you feel that way, they're immediately defending why that's wrong, and instead of like, I think that so much of the conflict in relationships comes from when couples are talking about the real core difficult issues, and somebody says something, classically me, I'll open my mouth and say how I feel, and then it will be totally taken out of, not necessarily taken out of context, but I will be defended against so intently, instead of my partner looking at like, well, why do you feel that way? It's like, no, that's wrong. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why that's wrong. You better shut your mouth. Like that's fucked up. It's like, instead of saying that's fucked up and telling me I'm wrong, say, why do you feel that way? And I think it goes on both sides. We really need to go and have like, when you have a difference of opinion or your partner says something where they're expressing their feelings and it makes you upset, they do something that you think is wrong. Why did they feel that way? Don't just go and tell them that it's wrong or explain why that's wrong. Say, why do you feel that way? I think that's really where the understanding is lacking.
Mm-hmm. We have these triggers, and when someone feels like they can lump whatever conditioning of culture that has been put upon us, say, sexism, equality, all of those types of things, and your partner comes at you or comes to you with something that triggers you. It may not be about you, may not be criticizing you, but somehow it triggers the woman. She will automatically defend because she's fearful, something scares her about it, to that labeled cause, group, that movement of equality or whatever that may be. And that is not a way to have a conversation, to actually have open dialogue with your partner. You can't have that if you're kind of hiding but protecting yourself behind this shield or this umbrella of this labeled cause. So the trigger, when we get triggered, it's a way to realize you feel something, you feel triggered, to take a breath and step back and say, how can I not put up my defenses, not jump to these safety nets of these causes and labels, and just talk openly and welcome the thoughts from my partner of what's going on personally for him, personally for her. And really I'm saying for the woman to do this, because the man is tiptoeing like crazy around the woman. So the woman needs to just drop that protection of women's lib, women's movement, feminist equality, Me Too, whatever it may be, and just go, what is he feeling that I need to know, so that I can help him, so that we can have a discussion, we can help each other with whatever's happening. And if you're feeling triggered, it could be, let's take a moment and let's talk about this tonight, or let's talk about this tomorrow, because I just need to wrap my, feelings around it, or step back from my trigger and get into a place where I can actually discuss it. So that's the thing that I think a lot of relationships or couples don't know, is that this conditioning comes into play in our personal relationships. And there's no way we can have authentic discussions if we're jumping into these labeled protective mechanisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, heavy stuff. What's going on in society today?
Definitely. And, there's so much in those labels. I don't know if you want to get into the inner battle of what's happening with women, or if we want to save that for another discussion.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of inner battle going on both sides. I think that something that, men feel, it's like we can't have ego, that, egotistical chauvinist. And I think that we're making an effort to not, I've recognized, I made a really interesting realization a long time ago about how I used ego to help build self-confidence. And then when I wanted to be a healer and be able to do more healing into the world, I needed to let go of that ego because I couldn't have judgment, and once I had elevated my self-confidence to a level that was sufficient, it was time to like release the ego. But to recognize that, ego is part of building your self-confidence and being a confident person that is in turn attractive to women. It's like we hate, this chauvinist fucking Donald Trump, but yet he's somehow managed to become the president of America with several wives. And like, it's like we hate what he stands for. We hate all of these decisions, but yet he's very successful. So it's like you have to go and recognize, like, you don't like what's working, but it's working, And so there's an internal struggle. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to be egotistical, but yet don't embody when you reject those, and then the more feminized you are, the more, the less attractive you are to your partner. And
very true.
I'm sure that there's a lot. Talk about the internal struggle of women.
Well, before I do that, I just want to say that what I see in men, this is really interesting because I see in men, even your friend who came into the studio last week that we talked to him, and every single man that I see, that before we enter in these discussions, they're tiptoeing in to this. They overhear what we're talking about. They tiptoe in. And then when they realize what we're talking about, the truth of what's in their hearts, their real struggle, the silencing of men, that's when they get this like furrowed brow, and they're like it's so welled up and bottled up inside. And there's so much that they've been holding back for so long that it's almost so hard for them to talk about it. And they have so many words that want to come out of their mouth at the same time that it's just like, and if it's like with your friend, it was a short conversation. So he had to leave. So he was like, and he was like trying to say the things that he has been feeling for, however long he's been feeling, years probably. And that he can't say to other people, other men, other women, mostly other women. And I see this struggle in men every time I have these discussions with them. And so there's that inner battle that I'm witnessing because I know what's going on. And then when I bring it out of them, it's a sense of relief of like, there's a woman who gets it, who understands.
Yeah.
Why do not like other women don't understand. And so I just had to say that I see this inner battle. And it's so important that men come, talk to each other first. Maybe that will help, but come and talk with us, because to just get this off your chest and know, or just watch us, because to know that you're not alone. This is not your personal battle with your spouse or just women. You're not the problem. The problem is societal. So, that's the inner struggle that I know I've talked to dozens of men, like for hundreds of hours. I'm writing a book about all this. And it's, so that's what's happening for men. And you are, I think there's going to be a time, because I want to force the hand of this time for men to be able to speak and not be criticized, and not looked at as this egomaniac chauvinist. You need to walk like a man again. And I call it have that swagger where you're like, I'm a man, I can do my thing, I can be proud, I can say the things I want and feel manly. And at the same time, have those feminine qualities that are nurturing and kind that you've learned from this whole societal shift toward being more feminine. So there's a way, and it's totally possible. So we're carving that path, guys, so that we can walk with you in that direction. So here's the thing for the inner battle with women. I think this will help men and women to understand what's going on in the woman's head and her emotions. So as a society, we are, if you just look at any Instagram, any social media, American women are super sexual as far as their looks, how beautiful, lots of cleavage. I mean, I'm a testament to the American look. I love being, feminine and sexy and fashionable and wear makeup and hair. And that, that in a woman's mind is for herself, she's saying. And then there's this little voice inside of her head that says, okay, you can put that out there, but don't let a man in, but don't let him hurt you, but don't, put him off. So it's so confusing to men because you're like, well, what is she? I see this person on the outside, and then she's like this hard ass bitch, like, just like when you try to even approach her, that even seems kind of playful. Even it's like you feel like you can't be playful with this woman. And so what's going on in her mind is like, if you seem playful, then there's an immediate red flag of like, okay, this man might want something from me. I have to protect myself. And then there's the inner innate DNA that is telling her, without her even knowing, be sexy. You've got to look, have all these traits that keep our species surviving. And then there's society that says, you got to be this amazing woman, like be awesome, wake up and be awesome kind of woman that looks totally together, that's got her meditation workout and her house is perfect and her clothing and her hair and everything is amazing and perfect. And she's also super strong, just like a man out there doing amazing things like hiking Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever it is, like all these things that women are supposed to be the superwoman. And we're told this. And so women feel like burdened with all of that and that they have to be out there in the world. And so they get that angry Karen thing. So it's like overburdened, all these thoughts of what they need to be, another calling from their DNA, and then, like all that wrapped up, and also wanting to be with a man. And then the Cinderella promise and the feminist promise that are not real promises, they're empty promises. So this is all in the book, you guys. If you want to, I'm going to do an audiobook first, so you can just like listen to it if you want. And it's a really short book. It's like 150 pages or something like that. But it's hard to explain it all until you get the whole thing, but that's it in a nutshell. And so when we look at the superpower, there is a way, women, that we can use our superpower. It looks like you want to say something, Zealous. You have something like on your mind.
I do. It's interesting. My daughter's favorite stories, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and stories are not the Cinderella stories, although she does very much enjoy those. She loves the wedding at the end of every story. But this storybook of like Princess Atlantia, and there's a couple other stories that follow the same streamline, where the princess is a very active outdoors athlete, and the parents tell her it's time for her to get married and she needs to pick a husband. And she says, I will only marry somebody who can beat me in a race. And so all of the men that want to marry her have to try to beat her in a race. And then it usually takes some form of trickery for the man to the one man that finally gets Atlantia's hand gets to marry Atlantia. She says, I kind of like the guy. I wouldn't mind losing this race to him. And the man says, like, there's no way I can beat her. What can I do? So he sees a witch and gets golden apples to throw at the race. So Atlantia is like, oh, I have to grab this magic apple. But it's interesting to me, the storyline that my daughter, being a 5-year-old in this modern society, that she's so interested and intrigued by the idea of this woman that's stronger and faster than the man. And that's the only one that she would want to marry, is somebody who can beat her. Kind of an interesting storyline, and I can see how that seems to be in alignment with what's going on socially right now.
Totally. There's also Frozen, which is a
a
girl, the Frozen movie, a girl with some superpower of like making ice that she can't control necessarily herself. She's a little afraid of her own power. And then there's Moana, who is independent and goes off sailing on the ocean, despite her culture saying, no, stay on the island. There's all this independence theme, power, beating men. That is the theme of how American women are today. And and then the thing that you mentioned about the trickery, to me, that's actually really real amongst women in our society, is they feel like they need to trick a man, and nobody would ever admit this, but there's there's a lot of manipulation involved in their minds of how they get a man. And the goal is to get married. I mean, when you see a woman with a ring and you're a single woman, that to her, and she doesn't even know this, is a status symbol. That to her is a group that she's not a part of, that she longs to be, that she's criticized for not being a part of. Her family, her friends, you're not married, you don't have a baby, and that's a whole nother thing that's on this woman's head, is this status. So we've got this trickery that a lot of women are like, okay, how am I going to, single women, and married women, how am I going to manipulate the man to get what I need? And that's not the way, women. I mean, men want to marry you. They want to be a part of your life, partner with you, and have children. Men crave that too. And women, for some reason, think that a man just wants sex, and he wants to just have sex with a lot of women all over the place. And that he is, not wanting to attach to one woman. And that's not necessarily the case. Maybe some men are like that, but what men realize is that when they're married and they have children, like the ones that I see with the furrowed brow who are so upset when we have these discussions, is that they love their families. They're crushed when their wife leaves them. I mean, as you know, that situation so well. They are so happy in a familied life, in a familied life. It's a way of being. And that's more so the case than a man just wanting to stay single and just play the field all the time. So, I think that theme that you talk about, Zealous, is like disturbing to me, that a 5-year-old, and not just your daughter, every young girl has this dichotomy inside of her, these inner battles caused by societal information, these movies and what you're supposed to be, and the wedding and the status of being married, but then being independent and strong and beating a man and manipulating him and looking for something magic to make it happen. But, that magic, that promise of magic, is also the problem, because marriage is a choice, and there's, I don't want to say work, but there's attentiveness involved in keeping a marriage fresh and thriving. And that's not the magic. People expect there to be magic and everlasting love that's magical. That's a new phenomenon in America. That is actually only in the last couple generations. It's not how people have been throughout time in partnered relationships and marriages. So this whole cultural thing is causing all this to happen.
Yeah, it's like, what is magic? You do one thing and then you get a different result. So in a relationship, what the magic is, I do something good for my partner, and then she does something good for me. And it's not premeditated or discussed and like this, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. It's like, no, that's what the magic of a relationship is you do something good for your husband and he surprises you with something good to you, and that makes you both happy. Mm-hmm. It's like there's an element of talking about it that is necessary, but I think that I'm just seeing this bright revelation of like, we're falling flat on our faces because we're not like reciprocating. We're not doing the magic. And it's not like you do it once and the magic happens. You have to do it every week, every day. Do something sweet for your partner.
Mm-hmm. It's that
don't expect them to do something, but you got to know if your partner does something for you, you do something, like you got to just want to do something good for your partner anyway. It doesn't even have to be because they just did something for you. you just do good for others, and it works out like magic.
It's the 80-80 dynamic. I think I've
Ugh.
explained before. Like 50-50 is one partner does half, the other partner does half. So they think that the entire whole is covered. But if you do 80 and 80, then there's so much more of that crossover that feels like magic. That is that essence of, oh, I feel so nurtured. I feel so loved. That reciprocity of wanting to do more for your partner because they've done more for you is there. But then there's also another superpower that is, we haven't talked about, the muse. So women have lost their muse superpower because they are being so male. They can only be a muse, not amused, but a muse, if they have if there's a little mystery to them. And the mystery in women is our intuitive senses, our senses and our intuitive nature. So we bring to the table things that are very different from men. We are so much more feeling oriented for good reason in what's it called? For the survival of the species. And we have these ways of doing things that are inborn. And what we're doing in this culture is dropping those because we're actually pushing them aside, which feels wrong internally, but we push them aside so that we can step into that maleness that we think we need to be. But if we stepped out of that maleness and allowed ourselves to bring these feminine, naturally, you don't have to put on femininity. Somebody said something like this: a flower does not try to be beautiful. A flower just is beautiful. And if you think about that, nature has a way of giving us what we need to attract and to carry on the species. Everything is there within us, women, and everything is there within the man. And we need to be who we are as nature has given us all these qualities. And so it's actually that simple. You know, when you think of a flower, just is beautiful. A flower just is what it is. It doesn't think about it. It doesn't try to be. It doesn't get angry and try to push back, or it just is and lives and survives and does its thing, and it's amazing and it's beautiful. So there's so much put on us from these societal things that we think we're supposed to do and be, and that causes that inner battle. You know, so if I were to simplify what we need to do, it is the story of the flower. All of us just be who we are meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what these conversations are for, is for people to kind of realize where do we want to end up? You know, I think that I had this really powerful kind of thought of closing our last one of, you know, I think the best way to kind of get the conversation started with your partner isn't necessarily about, you know, let's have a conversation. Nothing is more putting off than my partner saying, we need to have a talk. Nobody wants to hear that. It's like, what, you know, instantly I'm scared and my guard's up. And
but if she does say that, she has to say,
too, so it's like,
she has to say, I want to tell you something, but you're not in trouble. Let's talk a little later. Like, that's the key thing. You're not in trouble. We just have to discuss something. But go on.
And I think that the thing to go and work on is, you know, coming up with some goals, you know, and just being like, hey, what are some of your goals? Here's some of my goals. Let's work on some family goals. What can we do to help each other attain our goals? And to you know, start to talk about these issues that we have going on with relationships, and to go and make some of the goals of, like, you know, I would like to embrace more of my masculine and be my masculine self. And for women to go and recognize, like, hey, I want to be my feminine self. And to really, like, what is it we can do to help each other, and what is it we can do to be that, you know, because we want to be a happy couple that works together. And it's going to happen when you have a nice balance of masculine and feminine energy coming together, and people are able to do what they do best and shine at it. You know, it's like, everybody is capable of doing each other's jobs. We've proven that in this day and age. But, you know, sometimes some people can do it better, and that's just their innate skills. Like women have more softness and sweetness and nurturing. And, you know, I kiss my little kids and they're like, "You're scratchy, Dad." I'm like, I know. So.
Yeah, I would say if there's one thing to relate to that is in I was thinking instead, but the thing to do is to not necessarily try to be more something, feminine or masculine, but to let go of what you don't need to be. There's a difference in how that approach is. So if women let go of the idea that they need to compete with a man, that they need to be better, prove that they're better to the world, you know, do the things that people are saying you should do. If you can drop that, and that you just become what you're supposed to be and do naturally if you drop those things. And so for a man, if he stops trying to be, I guess, you know, this sounds terrible, but so cognizant of equality, and so acting upon women's need for confirmation that they are strong, you know, like the "you go girl" thing. Like, I think that that's not a bad thing, but at the same time, if you really look at that, it's a little almost condescending in its, even though it's not meant to be, because if she were already going, you wouldn't have to cheer for her. If she were already like,
well, you can also just go and leave it at that. It's like, look at you go. You go. You don't have to put the girl on there. I think that looking back, one of the things that was helpful is like my partner would leave me with the kids for a couple days, and when she came back, you know, I was like, I got this, no problem. I can totally be the stay-at-home dad. The kids weren't an issue. And it was like thinking, I mean, because it wasn't an issue, and I'm not like one to go and like complain about it, but it's like what she wanted me to be is like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're home. These kids just drive me crazy. Like, you're so good with them." I think that is just another way of like men are trying to go and be like, I can do everything that she can do. I can be you know, I can take care of the kids and manage the house and do all that stuff. And I can do it even better, whatever. It's like, well, you're fucking up your dynamic.
this is not a competition,
so like,
or it shouldn't
then
be.
even if you know you can do it, you got to, it's not even a competition. This is like, we want to go and show we can do that. But then for me, in my own scenario, is it backfired. And instead of her being like, "You're such a great partner. I'm so glad that, you know, you can take care of the kids and do a great job, and the house looks good too." And it's like, you know, what? You didn't have a list of complaints? Like, the kids are all happy and healthy and doing fine. Like, no, I needed to be needed, you know?
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
Just in that, like what you were referencing of is, instead of, you know, trying to be your masculine, it's like, just don't over feminize yourself. Don't let your partner have room to shine, and that will help them feel good that they're doing a good job.
And
they are important.
Yeah, on the flip side, women need to let their men be heroes. I know my husband does not like that when I look at him as the hero, because of how he was brought up, that women are equal, we're all the same. But I think in being a man and a woman, looking at the woman as the muse and the man heroically actually is mutual admiration and respect. So it's not equality, but it's mutual admiration and respect. And that's what we want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are just ways of labeling the hero and the muse so that we can understand what we're talking about here. So if we switch up that dynamic of, let's all try to show that we can both do all these things and that we're all good, and then show appreciation toward each other, if we can give space to each other to be the man, to be the woman. So again, it's a stepping back and allowing that to happen, that is a different way of approaching a relationship and approaching how you are as a partner. It's a different way of approach. So, it's something that people need to get their mind wrapped around in order to do it. And it is actually a big shift from what our society has been doing to then allowing yourself to drop all these pieces that society and people are telling you to do. It's a huge shift. It's a big ask that we're asking you to do here, or we're presenting to you here. It's not simple when most people are not doing it, but it will be a happier result.
Yeah, I think that we're having these conversations for people that are in relationships that aren't working and they're not too sure why, or for people that have relationships that are working and they enjoy the affirmation for it. It's just like, me saying, like, how can we have equality if we're individuals? These topics and perspectives are not necessarily for everyone, but if you're dealing with struggles, this could be the way to lead for you to understand what's going on and to lead you into a place of happiness and to have a more content relationship, or maybe save a relationship that isn't working. It's like, if what you got going on is working, that's great. We don't need to be, I don't want to criticize you or feel criticized for our conversations, because everybody is an individual and different people are going to find relationships that work well for them. But what we've recognized is there's a lot of relationships that aren't working, and having conversations with Angelina, who has a lot of understanding in history and is seeing just so many good relationships not working out because of the topics that we're talking about, of this demasculating of men and the masculine perspective that women are taking on. And so we're here to talk about why this is all happening the way that it is, and hopefully give you guys some peace. And it's not for everyone, but if what's working if what you're doing isn't working, here's some ideas and here's some understanding of how we got to this place.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the perfect way to end this show. We have so much more to talk about that we can always talk about in future shows, and we will. So thanks for being here with us. This is Conversations for Men That Women Need to Hear. We'll see you next week.
All right.